She had the kind of life most people would sell their souls for. The kind where birthday cakes were taller than the children gathered around them, where vacations happened on private islands, and where the last name, Evans, carried more weight than any degree. Taylor Evans, 22 years old, was the only daughter of Christopher Evans, a man who had turned steel and glass into an empire of skyscrapers that clawed at the sky. To the outside world, she was royalty without a crown, a young woman gliding through life with designer heels clicking against marble floors, a family fortune stretching further than her imagination, and a father whose face had appeared on Forbes covers more times than she could count. But inside, Taylor was crumbling. At her elite university, her professors knew her name before she stepped into class. Not because of academic achievement, but because of the donations that had carved her path straight into the most selective programs. No entrance exam had stopped her. No committee had dared to question her acceptance. Evans' money was enough to silence questions. But once she was there, once the weight of coursework stacked against her, the truth was impossible to ignore. She was failing. Miserably. Taylor's grades were not just bad, they were catastrophic. Exams came back bleeding red ink. 34%, 27%, sometimes zeros that mocked her with cold finality. Professors sighed when she turned in assignments, already resigned to disappointment. Some passed her with pity, others with frustration, but none with respect. Her classmates whispered behind her back, the cruel kind of laughter that doesn't need volume to be heard. How does she even still go here? She's only passing because her father bought the building. Taylor tried to ignore it. She walked the halls in her designer dresses, chin high, sunglasses on, pretending she couldn't hear, pretending their words didn't sting. But every night in the quiet of her penthouse dorm, when the shoes came off and the mask cracked, she knew the whispers were right. She wasn't smart enough, or at least she had convinced herself of that. And money couldn't hide the shame written across every grade slip. At home, things were worse. Christopher Evans, 55, was not a man given to softness. He had been raised in a modest family, fought his way up through ruthless deals, and built his empire brick by brick with discipline as cold as steel. To him, failure was a choice, weakness a crime. He had no patience for excuses, not even from his only daughter. "You're an embarrassment," he spat one evening after yet another call from her professors. His voice was low, steady, dangerous, like a blade sliding from its sheath. "If you worked for me, Taylor, you'd be fired by now." Taylor sat rigid at the dining table, fingers digging into the white linen napkin on her lap. The chandelier above them glittered, casting sharp light across crystal glasses and untouched plates of lobster tail. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him she wasn't his employee, that she was his daughter. But the words stuck in her throat. She forced herself to speak, her voice flat, tired. "But I'm not your employee. I'm your daughter." Christopher's eyes narrowed. "The world doesn't care. Either you become someone, or you'll just be another rich kid with a last name and no spine. And I won't carry you." The silence that followed was worse than the words. Taylor could feel it pressing against her chest, a weight heavier than any exam she had failed. The next morning, she slid into the back seat of her sleek black Mercedes, a gift from her father on her 21st birthday, and was driven to campus as if nothing had happened. She walked into lecture halls like they were fashion runways, eyes hidden behind tinted lenses, lips painted in a perfect gloss. Some students stared with envy, others with contempt. But beneath the layers of luxury, Taylor carried a secret no one saw. She was drowning. No amount of designer clothes could mask the truth written in red across her exams. No number of parties or champagne flutes could erase the ache of being called a failure by the only man she wanted approval from. The world thought Taylor Evans had it all. But the truth was crueler. She had a last name that unlocked every door, and yet, once inside, she couldn't find her way out. And deep down, she knew it. The envelope was thin, almost weightless, but Taylor's hands trembled as she tore it open. Another exam. Another failure. The grade stared back in thick red ink. 28%. A number so low it mocked her. At home that evening, her father was waiting. Christopher Evans sat at the head of the glass dining table, jacket still buttoned, tie knotted like armor. His phone lay face down beside his plate, a sign he was ready for battle. "You failed again," he said flatly, eyes fixed on the paper in his hands. Taylor swallowed. "I tried." "You have every resource," Christopher cut her off. His voice sharpened. "Tutors, the best schools, every opportunity money can buy. And you squander it. Do you know how humiliating it is to have professors call me about my daughter's incompetence?" Her throat tightened. "Maybe I'm just not like you." His gaze snapped up. "Then what are you? A parasite? Living off my name, wasting my money?" He leaned forward, his voice low and cutting. "If you don't pull yourself together, I'll cut you off. No allowance. No car. No apartment. Nothing." The words landed like a hammer. She wanted to argue, but the truth stung. She had no idea who she was without his name. That night she lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The city lights outside mocked her with their brightness. All the money in the world couldn't silence the ache in her chest. She felt like she was suffocating inside a life that glittered on the outside, but was hollow within. The next day, she dragged herself to class, mascara smudged from another sleepless night. When the lecture ended, she stayed behind, slumping into a chair as the room emptied. She pulled the failed exam from her bag, the red numbers blurring through her tears. Her shoulders shook. For the first time, she whispered aloud, "I can't do this." That's when she heard it. "The only true failure is believing you can't begin again," a calm voice said, echoing through the empty hall. Taylor's head snapped up. At the back of the room, a woman pushed a mop slowly across the floor. She wore a faded uniform, her posture straight, eyes steady. Gray streaks ran through her curls, and her dark skin glistened from long hours of work. Taylor blinked, wiping her tears. "What did you just say?" The woman paused, leaning on the mop handle. "You heard me." Taylor scoffed. "Easy for you to say. You're not failing out of college with the whole world watching." The janitor didn't flinch. Her voice stayed calm. "No. But I've failed in bigger ways than you can imagine. And I'm still here." For a moment, Taylor was silent. She had expected pity, maybe nothing at all. Not words that cut straight through her. The woman gave a small nod and went back to her work, as if nothing more needed to be said. But Taylor couldn't shake it. That single line echoed louder than her father's threats, heavier than her failing grades. It was the first time she truly noticed her. Oprah Williams. The woman no one else seemed to see. Taylor told herself she wouldn't think about it again, but the janitor's words stuck to her like a burr. "The only true failure is believing you can't begin again." It replayed in her head during lectures, while she scrolled aimlessly through her phone, even as she lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling. Why did it matter what a janitor thought? Why did her voice carry more weight than all the professors combined? By the next afternoon, Taylor found herself wandering past the same corridor. She told herself it was coincidence, but when she saw the woman pushing her mop in slow, steady circles, she stopped. "You," Taylor said, crossing her arms. "Socrates, or whoever you quoted yesterday, doesn't change the fact that I'm failing." The woman looked up unbothered. "And yet here you are, still thinking about it." Taylor flushed. "I'm not here for advice." "Then why are you standing in front of me?" Taylor opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, she had no answer. The woman gave a small, almost knowing smile, and went back to her work. It unsettled Taylor more than she wanted to admit. Over the next week, Taylor kept noticing her. In empty hallways, cleaning near lecture halls, hauling buckets no one else looked twice at. Always quiet, always composed. One day, Taylor lingered long enough to ask, "How do you know all those quotes? You sound like, I don't know, a professor or something." The woman straightened, resting her weight on the mop handle. Her dark eyes were steady. "Because I was one." Taylor blinked. "Excuse me?" "Professor of Philosophy and Literature. University of Chicago. 15 years. Taylor let out a nervous laugh. "And now you're..." She gestured clumsily at the mop. "Now I'm this." The woman's tone held no shame, only fact. Taylor tilted her head, searching for sarcasm, for bitterness. But there was none. What happened? The woman hesitated, then answered simply, I told the truth when others wanted silence. Exposed plagiarism tied to a dean. They offered me hush money. I refused. That was the end. Taylor's stomach dropped. They ruined you for doing the right thing? Ruined, no. Shifted my path, yes. My husband died not long after. Bills don't wait. Children don't stop growing. I worked where I could. She looked down at her hands, rough from years of labor. Now I clean floors instead of lecture halls. But I still know what I know. Taylor felt something she rarely felt. Shame. Here she was, the billionaire's daughter who had squandered every opportunity, speaking to a woman who had lost everything for the sake of integrity. For the first time, Taylor wondered if she'd ever met anyone stronger. You're smarter than anyone I've ever met here, Taylor admitted quietly. The woman didn't gloat. She only said, wisdom isn't about being smart. It's about refusing to lie to yourself. The words landed like stones in Taylor's chest. That evening, Taylor couldn't concentrate on anything. Not her assignments, not her father's angry texts, not the endless scroll of her social media. She kept thinking of the janitor who used to be a professor, the woman who had lost everything and yet stood taller than anyone Taylor knew. The next morning, Taylor waited by the side entrance, nerves buzzing. When the woman appeared with her mop bucket, Taylor stepped in front of her. Please, she blurted. Help me. The woman raised an eyebrow. With what? Everything. My exams. My writing. I can't keep failing. Taylor stopped, fighting back tears. I'm drowning. For a long moment, the woman said nothing. Then she set down her mop and folded her arms. My name is Oprah Williams. Taylor nodded quickly. I know who you are, Taylor Evans, Oprah said. But if I agree to help you, that name stays at the door. You're not Evans's daughter. You're not rich, not privileged. You're just Taylor. And you start from zero. Taylor's breath caught. She had never heard anyone speak to her like that, without fear, without deference. What does starting from zero even mean? She whispered. It means leaving your pride outside. It means admitting you don't know. And it means being willing to fail until you understand. Taylor swallowed hard. For years, she had hidden her failures, papered them over with wealth, excuses, her father's power. But standing there, staring into Oprah's calm, unshaken face, she realized she wanted this. Needed it. Fine, she said, her voice small but steady. I'll start from zero. Oprah gave a slow nod, as if sealing a contract. Then we begin. In that moment, Taylor felt something shift. She didn't know it yet, but the woman everyone else overlooked was about to become the most important figure in her life. The janitor wasn't who she seemed. She carried a past of brilliance and resilience, and she had just opened the door to Taylor's transformation. The first lesson didn't happen in a classroom. It happened in a janitor's closet. The smell of bleach hung in the air, buckets lined the wall, and a single dim bulb buzzed overhead. Taylor sat on an overturned crate, a blank notebook in her lap. Oprah leaned against her mop, like it was a lectern. You want me to tutor you, Oprah said, her voice even. But I'm not here to give you answers. I'm here to teach you how to see. Taylor frowned. See what? I already read the books. I just don't understand them. That's because you read words, not meaning, Oprah replied. Start simple. Why do you think the author wrote this? What are they trying to make you feel? Taylor hesitated. No professor had ever asked her that. They had demanded summaries, citations, facts, but not feelings. She scribbled something half-hearted in her notebook. Oprah took one glance and shook her head. Too shallow. Try again. Ask yourself what it reminds you of, what it stirs inside you. Don't write what you think I want to hear. Write what's true. It was maddening. But Taylor tried. That night she stayed up until 2 a.m, notebook open, writing not about characters or themes but about herself, about her father's disappointment, her fear of failure, the emptiness that trailed her like a shadow. For the first time, words poured out of her that weren't meant for grades. They were confessions. The next day, she handed the pages to Oprah. Oprah read silently, her eyes scanning with precision. When she finished, she handed the notebook back. Red ink marked the margins, not cruel but sharp. This line is honest.
Keep it.
This one? Pretty but hollow. Rewrite with your soul. Taylor flushed with embarrassment. But also something else. For once, someone wasn't pitying her. Oprah demanded more, and strangely, that felt like respect. Days turned into weeks. Each morning before lectures, Taylor slipped into that closet or the empty library, notebook in hand. Oprah never lectured. She asked questions instead. Why do you think silence matters in this scene? What does courage sound like to you? When have you hidden behind your last name? Taylor hated those questions. They made her uncomfortable, forced her to peel back layers she'd spent years hiding behind. But slowly, she felt something shift. Books stopped being assignments. They became mirrors. And the notebook filled up, not with neat essays or polished answers, but with raw, jagged truths. For the first time, Taylor wasn't just learning to pass. She was learning to feel. One evening, she closed her notebook and realized her hands weren't shaking. The words inside weren't perfect, but they were hers.
Honest. Alive.
She stared at the filled pages, a strange warmth blooming in her chest.
Hope.
The smallest spark, but real. It startled her. She hadn't felt it in years. Christopher Evans was a man who noticed everything, even if he pretended not to. He saw the way Taylor had started carrying notebooks instead of shopping bags, the way her late nights were filled with scribbling instead of parties. At dinners, she sometimes spoke with a spark in her eye, quoting authors he didn't know she'd ever read. But instead of pride, he felt suspicion. One evening, he returned from a late board meeting to find her hunched at the dining room table, pen scratching furiously across paper. The table was cluttered not with glossy magazines or untouched textbooks, but with filled notebooks, their pages covered in messy handwriting. "What is all this?" he asked, his tone flat but edged. Taylor stiffened. "Just work." "Since when do you work?" His eyes narrowed. "Who's been helping you?" Taylor hesitated. She thought of lying, of saying a tutor or a professor. But something inside her rebelled. For once, she didn't want to hide. "Oprah," she said finally. "The janitor." The silence that followed was dangerous. Christopher straightened, his jaw tightening. "You're telling me the daughter of Christopher Evans is taking lessons from the woman who mops floors?" "She's more than that," Taylor snapped before she could stop herself. "She was a professor. She's teaching me more than anyone ever has." Christopher's voice rose, sharp and venomous. "She's a failure, Taylor. A janitor. And you're embarrassing this family by associating with her. Do you have any idea how this looks? People already think you're a joke. Now you want them to believe you're sitting at the feet of a cleaning lady for wisdom?" Taylor's chest tightened, but she held her ground.
She sees me, Dad.
Not your money. Not your empire.
Me.
And that's more than you've ever done. For a moment, she thought he might strike her. Instead, his voice dropped to a deadly calm. "If you keep this up, you lose everything. No allowance. No trust fund. No inheritance. You'll have nothing. Do you understand me?" Her breath caught. The words were meant to crush her, and for a second, they almost did. The thought of being cut off, of losing the security she had always known, sent panic clawing up her throat. But then she remembered Oprah's voice in the empty hall. "The only true failure is believing you can't begin again." Taylor steadied herself. "Then maybe I need nothing. Maybe I need to figure out who I am without your money." Christopher's eyes went cold, like shutters slamming shut. "Don't test me, Taylor. You won't win." He turned away, dismissing her as though she were just another failed investment. She sat frozen, heart pounding, fear and defiance warring inside her. The wedge between them had always been there, but now it felt permanent, carved deep and sharp. For the first time in her life, Taylor understood something terrifying and liberating. Her father's empire could vanish tomorrow, and she'd still have Oprah's words, Oprah's lessons, her own notebooks filled with truths. And she wasn't giving that up. It started with whispers. At first, it was just a few curious looks when Taylor lingered too long in empty hallways with the janitor. Students passing by would nudge each other, snickering. Billionaire's daughter, hanging out with the cleaning staff. A few even snapped photos, grainy images of Taylor bent over a notebook while Oprah leaned on her mop handle, asking questions. Within a week, the whispers grew louder. Parents began calling the university office. They wanted to know why the daughter of Christopher Evans, a man who had donated millions, was spending hours with a janitor. One mother was overheard saying, "If my tuition pays for professors, why is she getting her education from the help?" The administration acted quickly. One afternoon, Oprah was called into the office. The assistant dean sat stiffly behind her polished mahogany desk, hands folded as though she were delivering a verdict she'd rehearsed. "Mrs. Williams," she began, her voice carefully neutral, "we've received concerns about your interactions with students. Spending time outside your custodial duties, engaging in teaching activities." Oprah's back was straight, her gaze calm. "They asked for help. I gave it. That's what teaching is." The dean cleared her throat, uncomfortable. "That may be so, but it isn't your role. And unfortunately, with current budget cuts, we have to make certain adjustments." Oprah didn't blink. She knew the script. She had lived it before. By the end of the week, she was gone. Her cart, her mop, the quiet hum of her gospel tunes in the hallways. All of it disappeared. The custodial closet stood empty, echoing with absence. Students noticed, some relieved, others uneasy. But Taylor felt it like a knife to the chest. The morning she found out, Taylor stormed into the administration building, fists clenched. "You can't do this," she shouted at the secretary. "She was helping me, helping us. You don't fire someone for making a difference." The secretary avoided her eyes. "It was a budget decision, Miss Evans. Nothing personal." "Budget decision?" Taylor spat. "My father's donations alone could pay her salary for 10 lifetimes." But it was useless. The decision had been made quietly, neatly, without appeal. That evening, Taylor sat in the empty library with her notebooks spread before her. The pages blurred through her tears. For weeks she had poured herself into them, writing truths she never dared to speak aloud. Now, without Oprah's red pen, without her steady questions, the words felt empty again. It was like being abandoned. When they finally met in secret, outside the campus gates, Taylor clung to her like a drowning child. "You can't leave me. I need you. I'll tell my father. I'll go to the board. I'll fight this." Oprah held her by the shoulders, steady and firm.
No.
"Not yet." Taylor's voice cracked.
Why?
"They're wrong. You're the only reason I've made it this far. Without you, I'll fall apart again." Oprah's expression softened, but her words were sharp. "Taylor, your voice must stand on its own. Not mine. Not your father's name. Yours." Taylor's breath caught. "But I'm not strong enough." "Yes, you are." Oprah's eyes burned with quiet conviction. Strength doesn't come when everything is easy. It comes when you lose everything and keep going anyway. That's what happened to me. And it's what has to happen to you. Taylor shook her head, tears streaming. "I don't know if I can." "You can," Oprah whispered. "But you'll only know it once you try." She pulled Taylor into a brief, firm embrace before stepping away.
"This isn't the end.
"It's your beginning." Then she turned and walked into the night, leaving Taylor standing at the gate, clutching her notebooks like lifelines. For days afterward, Taylor wandered the campus like a ghost. The lessons she'd started to grasp felt fragile without Oprah's voice guiding her. She could hear the snickers again, see the mocking glances. The progress she had fought for threatened to unravel. But deep inside, her mentor's final words rang louder than the laughter, sharper than the fear. "Your voice must stand on its own." The announcement went up on a Monday morning. A sheet of white paper taped to the bulletin board in the main hall, bold black letters across the top. Senior speech contest topic: What does success really mean? Students crowded around, buzzing with nervous energy. For most, it was just another line on their resume, a way to impress college scouts or secure scholarship recommendations. But for Taylor Evans, it was different. For her, it was war. When she read the words, something clenched in her chest. This was her chance, maybe her only one, to speak the truth she'd been learning in secret, to honor Oprah, to prove that her voice could stand without her father's shadow. That night, Taylor spread her notebooks across her desk. Page after page of Oprah's red ink, her questions, her challenges. Don't just say it, mean it. Rewrite with your soul. She flipped through them, searching not for polished sentences, but for the heartbeat underneath. Her pen hovered over a blank page. Then she began to write. Not for grades, not for professors, not for her father. For herself. For Oprah. For the truth. The words came slow at first, jagged, clumsy. But soon they poured out. About failure, about pride, about transformation. She wrote until dawn painted the city in pale gold, her hand cramping, her eyes raw. For the first time in years, she felt alive. 2 nights later, Christopher found her at the dining table, drafts scattered like fallen leaves. He picked one up, scanning a paragraph aloud. Real success isn't measured by wealth, but by what you leave in others. He snorted. What nonsense is this? Taylor stiffened. It's my speech. His eyes hardened. For that ridiculous contest? It matters, she said quietly. Christopher's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. If you embarrass me in front of the school, in front of the board, you're finished. No allowance. No trust fund. No inheritance. I'll cut you off completely. Taylor's heart pounded. The threat was real, and this time final. But she met his stare and, for once, didn't flinch. Then cut me off. I'm not doing this for you. Christopher's jaw tightened, the air between them sharp with unspoken fury. He slammed the papers back on the table and walked out, his footsteps echoing like gunshots. Taylor sat frozen, her hands shaking. But when she looked back at the words she'd written, a strange calm settled over her. They weren't just sentences. They were her.
And no one could take that away.
By the end of the week, she had a finished draft. It wasn't polished like her father would expect, or neat like her professors demanded.
It was raw, jagged, alive.
Every line carried Oprah's voice, her own pain, her own rebirth. When Taylor folded the pages into her notebook, she knew one thing with absolute clarity. This speech wasn't for applause. It was for truth. And she would stand on that stage, no matter the cost. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Rows of polished shoes tapped against the floor, parents whispered in crisp suits and pearl necklaces, professors flipped through clipboards. At the far back, a row of scouts from universities and foundations leaned forward, ready to measure every syllable. Backstage, Taylor Evans gripped her notebook so tightly the pages wrinkled. Her heart pounded, but for once, the fear wasn't about failing an exam. This was different. This was about being heard. When her name was called, the room hushed. She stepped out into the spotlight, her plain black dress a sharp contrast to the shimmer of her classmates' tailored suits. No designer heels, no glittering jewelry. Just her. Taylor swallowed hard, then spoke. My name is Taylor Evans. Some of you know me as the daughter of Christopher Evans. Some of you know me as the girl who failed every exam. You've seen the headlines, the whispers. You've watched me stumble, trip, and drown under the weight of a name bigger than me. Her voice wavered, but she kept going. They say I had everything. But the truth is, I didn't have the one thing that mattered. Someone who believed in me. The audience shifted, murmurs rising. Parents glanced at each other, professors stiffened. But Taylor pressed on. She wasn't my professor. She wasn't paid to help me. She didn't have an office or a title. She had a mop, a uniform, and the courage to speak when no one else did. She lifted the notebook, the one filled with weeks of lessons scrawled in ink and pain. Her name is Oprah Williams. And she taught me the secret no textbook ever did, that real success isn't wealth or power or names in magazines. Real success is transformation. It's when you stop lying to yourself, when you stop hiding behind your pride, when you see others, not just yourself. The room was silent now, every eye locked on her. For years, I believed success was what my father told me: grades, prestige, money, control. But I was empty. I was failing not because I couldn't learn, but because I didn't know what learning was. Oprah taught me that learning is messy, painful, personal, that you only change when something inside you breaks and rebuilds stronger. Taylor's voice cracked, but she didn't stop. So, what does success really mean? To me, it means this moment. Standing here with nothing but my own voice. Not my father's name, not his empire.
Just me.
And honoring the woman who taught me to see. She paused, scanning the room. Her father sat rigid in the front row, jaw clenched, eyes burning with cold fury. But in the very back, barely visible under the dim lights, a woman in plain clothes sat quietly. Oprah. Her hands clasped, her eyes glistening. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Taylor's throat tightened, but she finished strong. Success isn't being seen. Success is seeing others. And I see her. I see myself. And I hope tonight, maybe you'll see differently too. For a heartbeat, the room was frozen. Then one clap broke the silence. Another followed. And then the entire auditorium erupted, applause thundering against the walls. Parents stood. Professors wiped their eyes. Even the scouts in the back leaned forward, astonished. Taylor exhaled, her chest heaving. She had done it. Not for a grade. Not for approval.
For truth.
In the crowd, Christopher Evans didn't clap. His face was stone, his silence deafening. But for the first time, Taylor didn't care. That night, someone recorded her speech and posted it online. By morning, it had spread across campus. By evening, it was national news. Billionaire's daughter credits Janitor for teaching her the true meaning of success. The world had called her spoiled, privileged, a failure. But now they were calling her something else. A voice of change. The morning after the contest, Taylor woke to find her phone buzzing endlessly. Dozens of messages, news alerts, social media tags. Clips of her speech had spread far beyond the auditorium, climbing into headlines and trending feeds. Billionaire's daughter credits Janitor for teaching her the true meaning of success. The words repeated everywhere, on blogs, in newspapers, whispered in coffee shops and classrooms. But the most remarkable change wasn't for Taylor. It was for Oprah. By the end of the week, the same woman the university had quietly fired was receiving invitations. A community college asked her to give a lecture. A local newspaper ran a profile on her. Then came speaking engagements, podcasts, and finally a teaching offer from a school bold enough to see what others had thrown away. For the first time in years, the world was listening to Oprah Williams again. Taylor could have ridden the wave herself. She received letters from Ivy League schools, calls from professors suddenly interested in her potential. For once, doors were opening because of her name, not just her father's. But Taylor turned them down. "I don't want a place at their table," she told Oprah one evening as they sat in a quiet cafe, notebooks between them. "I want to build our own." Oprah tilted her head, watching her with the same sharp, thoughtful gaze she had worn the first day they met. "What exactly are you thinking?" "A center. A place where students who feel invisible can come and be seen. Not judged. Not graded into silence. A space like what you gave me. Honest, raw, real." Taylor's voice grew stronger. "We could call it the Williams-Evans Institute." For a long moment, Oprah said nothing. Then her lips curved into the faintest smile. "If we do this, Taylor, we do it together." Taylor reached across the table and clasped her mentor's hand. "Always." 6 months later, the Williams-Evans Institute opened its doors in a repurposed community center on the south side of the city. The walls weren't lined with portraits of donors, but with student art and quotes that had once been scribbled in Taylor's notebook. Learning is transformation. Strength is found in failing forward. Success is seeing others. Every evening, kids and young adults poured in. Some had been written off as hopeless. Some carried scars from systems that ignored them. But here, they found something different. Oprah taught with chalk, books, and her unshakable presence. Taylor organized programs, sat with students in late-night writing circles, and listened to voices she once would have overlooked. It wasn't glamorous. There were no designer gowns or cameras flashing. But it was real. On the day of the grand opening, Christopher Evans showed up unannounced. He stood at the back of the modest hall, arms crossed, as his daughter took the stage. She wore no jewelry, just a simple blouse and slacks, her hair pulled back. Yet she carried herself with a confidence that silenced the room. "I used to think greatness came from wealth, from power, from being seen," Taylor said, her voice steady. "But I was wrong. Greatness doesn't come from being seen. It comes from seeing others. That's what Oprah Williams taught me. And it's the foundation of this place. A home for those who have been overlooked, silenced, or dismissed." The audience applauded, but Christopher didn't move. He watched, his expression unreadable. For the first time, though, he wasn't looking at his daughter as a failure. He was seeing someone stronger, braver, and freer than he had ever been. When the ceremony ended, he stepped outside into the cool evening air. Taylor joined him, holding a notebook under her arm. For a moment, father and daughter stood in silence. Then Christopher spoke quietly, almost grudgingly. "You've built something real." Taylor met his gaze. "Not with your money. With the truth she gave me." Christopher gave a short nod. He didn't say he was proud, but for the first time, Taylor didn't need him to. That night, as the Institute's lights glowed against the city sky, Taylor sat with Oprah at the front steps, watching students file out with notebooks in their hands, laughter echoing in the dark. This time, Taylor wasn't drowning. She wasn't hiding. She was becoming. And she knew, without a doubt, the secret was no longer just hers. If Taylor and Oprah's journey moved you, don't let it end here. Subscribe now for more powerful stories of resilience, transformation, and hope. Together, we'll keep shining a light on the lessons that truly change lives.